In a fabricated realm drowned beneath the currents of destiny, uncertainty lingered about whether fate could ever be trusted. It was a force capable of steering one toward countless endings, molded by the smallest of choices. Yet, some believed that regardless of what path was taken, every soul was bound to arrive at the same inevitable conclusion, a life already charted by unseen hands. Within that same world, chaos erupted when monsters emerged from nowhere and overran the land. Panic consumed the population, dragging the once stable order into ruin. Some collapsed, trembling in despair, while others fled aimlessly, their cries echoing through the shattered landscape as the grotesque creatures advanced, spreading terror like wildfire. During one of these desperate escapes, a small group of survivors reached a dead end, a towering cliff that marked the edge of their hope. They scrambled for hiding places, but in the barren plain only scattered rocks offered meager shelter. Behind one of them, a girl wept in silence, her voice cracking as she prayed for the monster to overlook her. Her trembling body betrayed her, and the soft sound of a tear striking her chest guided the beast straight to her. In those final moments, she pleaded for mercy, but her cries met a creature devoid of empathy. Driven purely by instinct, it acted, swift, merciless, unfeeling. Not far away, a boy with vivid green eyes crouched behind another rock, watching. The scene made him question whether this was truly the so-called phantom star. He realized how brutal the beginner's test was, understanding that survival for even 5 minutes was the key to completing his job change. Yet, judging by the terrified civilians around him, he doubted anyone here could last a single minute. The boy's name was Jiang Kai. At that moment, he was taking part in an initiation test on a world known as Phantom Star, a massive celestial body that had mysteriously appeared near Earth's orbit 50 years earlier. Strangely, its arrival had not disturbed the planet's gravitational balance or trajectory. Still, after its sudden manifestation, life on Earth began to warp. Animals and plants mutated into beings of nightmare, creatures later known as celestial monsters, and civilization crumbled beneath their rampage. As humanity teetered on extinction, a new phenomenon emerged. Strange teleportation matrices scattered across the planet. Those who dared to step through them found themselves transported to Phantom Star, their bodies converted into digital form, their fates rewritten in a world where survival itself had become the first trial. When humanity first stepped onto Phantom Star, they found themselves in a world that blurred the line between illusion and reality, a digital realm of astonishing hyper-realism. In this place, every person could assume a profession, gaining skills, equipment, and status values that grew stronger through progression, much like a game character leveling up. Over time, they discovered something even more extraordinary. Once an individual reached a high enough level within Phantom Star, that power could be transferred back to Earth. The impossible became real. Humans who returned were capable of battling the celestial monsters that once reduced them to prey. In the end, survival itself became a game of evolution. To withstand the monsters and reclaim their world, humans had to grow stronger through Phantom Star. Those who dared to traverse this otherworldly plane in search of power became known as explorers. Among them was Jiang Kai, but his trial had already turned into a nightmare. Surrounded by corpses and the carnage left behind by the test monster, Jiang realized he was the last one alive. His back pressed against the cliff's edge, he understood there was no path left to run. As the creature turned toward him, the weight of regret crushed him harder than any wound. He thought of his family, the lies he told, the promises he broke. His sister, who had endured so much just to help him enter Phantom Star, had assured him not to worry about the costs. His older brother, despite his failing kidneys, had continued to struggle to save enough for surgery. Yet here he was, unable to complete the job transfer, wasting everything they had sacrificed for him, dying a useless death at the edge of an abyss. Despair threatened to consume him, but as the monster lunged to deliver the final blow, instinct roared louder than fear. He bolted, his only thought being that if he was going to die, he'd do it fighting, for them. The creature's strike grazed him, ripping through his shoulder, but the pain only fueled his resolve. With no way forward and death behind him, Jiang made his choice. He hurled himself off the cliff. To him, the odds of survival in the abyss seemed better than facing that monster head-on. Just as Jiang hurled himself into the abyss, a chime echoed through the air, the unmistakable tone of a system notification. Before his eyes, a translucent window appeared, commenting on his desperate leap. The message congratulated him for triggering a 1 in a million event, awarding him access to a hidden career. Another prompt followed, confirming that his job transfer had succeeded and that he had obtained an honorable hidden profession. After the long, disorienting fall, his body finally struck the earth, cushioned by branches and leaves that slowed his descent. Against all odds, he survived. When consciousness returned, he found himself lying beside a river flowing steadily southward. Confusion set in. His wounds were gone, his pain erased. The injuries from before had completely vanished. Then, the air rippled. A distortion in space unfolded before him, and from it emerged the system's physical manifestation. A beautiful girl formed from light and data. She announced that, since his transfer was complete, his base attributes would now be updated. It was as though he had been reborn with full vitality. Jiang asked if she was the artificial intelligence that governed this world, but she ignored the question, listing his newly awakened talents instead. The first was double talent, an ability that amplified all rewards and punishments twofold, with a slim 1% chance of triggering a super double effect that multiplied them 10 times over. By sheer luck, the boy had activated this hidden power the very moment he acquired it, unlocking another gift in return. The next window revealed his secondary talent, super critical. It multiplied his damage 200 times over, though it had only a 1% activation rate. Jiang stared at the glowing screen in disbelief, his exhaustion replaced by exhilaration. Against impossible odds, he had fallen into despair and landed on destiny. After reviewing his status window, the hero noticed that his 4 basic attributes totaled 36 points. He realized that the total attributes of a normal person after a job change were usually around 20, concluding that this difference was due to his double talent. Because of that, he understood that each level gained on Phantom Star would be equivalent to the evolution of 2 people. He also had the second talent, super critical, which was very different from a normal person's critical punch that only reached a 2-fold increase. Even with only a 1% chance of activation, if Jiang could raise his critical rate, the damage from this ability in the future would be terrifying. After analyzing his situation, he looked ahead and saw a weapon commonly used by monsters stuck in the river. His original plan had been to change class and return to Earth to earn some money, since even a weak class could still bring profit. However, he had not expected to accidentally trigger an additional job transfer judgment, becoming a hidden and powerful player. Thinking about it, Jiang believed that he might now be able to reach the amount needed for his older brother's surgery and give his family better conditions. Still, he knew that completing the job transfer in the beginner test was only the first step, with other trials to come. The main goal for every beginner was to reach the city of Shenzhou within 7 days, a mission considered extremely difficult because the test area was full of monsters. If he died, he would be teleported back to Earth. Although death on Phantom Star caused no harm in the real world and allowed re-entry after some time, this privilege was limited to the rich, as returning required a high cost. For Jiang, there would be no second chance. Then, from the depths of the forest, a terrifying sound echoed, announcing the hero's first challenge with his new abilities. He hid behind a tree, recognizing the familiar cry. Moments later, a massive serpent burst forth, attacking a man who swung blindly in fear, fists cloaked in strange energy. That man was Jiang Kai's longtime friend, Yuan Zhu, who, despite having a seemingly strong ability, still trembled before the monsters. From his hiding spot, the protagonist realized that the one being attacked by the land snakes was his friend. Knowing that a single bite could kill, he called out to him and rushed to help. Yuan, shocked to see him, cried and begged him to flee, warning that the snakes possessed high attributes and deadly poison, creatures far beyond what beginners could handle. Ignoring the warning, Jiang threw his weapon with precision, piercing one of the snakes and killing it instantly. Yuan stood frozen in disbelief, astonished that his friend could slay such a creature. But Jiang had anticipated this moment. Before entering the fight, he had already decided to use Yuan's situation as a distraction, striking when the monsters were focused elsewhere. Sensing danger, the remaining snakes hissed and lunged at him. Yuan shouted again, warning that their agility far exceeded human limits. Even so, Jiang easily evaded every strike, moving with the enhanced speed granted after his system update. His friend could only stare, stunned by the sharp reflexes and speed that defied logic. Jiang knew his attributes had multiplied after the job change, putting him on par with a level 2 being, stronger than the level 1 snakes. Tightening his grip on his weapon, he told Yuan to keep drawing their attention. After a short but fierce struggle, the snakes lay dead, leaving Yuan speechless at how quickly the battle had ended. Jiang looked at his system window, thinking his profession seemed to favor low strength but high agility, with enough offensive power to deal damage. Finally, his eyes fell on the iron spear he had taken from the human-faced monster, realizing it could be a valuable weapon for the beginner zone. With the battle finished, Yuan ran to his friend, wrapping him in a tight embrace and praising his strength despite being only a beginner. Jiang pushed him back, saying he had just been lucky after completing his job change and obtaining the player profession. Yuan didn't fully understand what that meant, but mentioned that his own class wasn't bad either, being a martial artist. It was no wonder he had lasted so long, as that profession ranked 5th within the Divine Glory realm. No one truly knew how many professions existed on Phantom Star. Every explorer, however, had to undergo the job change upon arrival, and the type of profession depended entirely on the job change material purchased before entering the virtual world. The wealthy could afford top-tier materials, spending millions to obtain strong professions such as martial artist, paladin, or assassin. The poor, on the other hand, were limited to the cheapest materials, which granted weak professions like drunkard or beggar. Changing the subject, the hero asked if his friend had borrowed money from loan sharks to afford his profession, but Yuan avoided answering, promising to explain later. On Phantom Star, players could exchange any loot they obtained for money, and Zhang intended to use his earnings to help his family. Together, they planned to take the carcasses of the defeated snakes, since materials and equipment from Phantom Star turned into cards that could later be traded or sold in the system market. Judging from the fight, the player profession already appeared stronger than the martial artist class, which was considered high-ranking among explorers. Suddenly, a girl appeared in the forest, lost and disoriented. Her sudden arrival made Jiang curious, while Yuan grew tense with fear. Despite the dangerous surroundings, the girl, who introduced herself as Su Ai, looked harmless and pleaded to join them for safety. Jiang immediately refused, stating that they were already struggling to survive, and bringing another person would only make things harder. Su begged not to be left behind, explaining through tears that her profession was healer, a class that could aid them in battle. She insisted that if they faced venomous snakes again, she could extract their poison to strengthen their weapons. Her words made them hesitate, as the healer profession was ranked among the top 10 high-level classes, changing the situation entirely. Remembering everything he had gone through, Jiang realized how crucial healing would be in the beginner stage. If not for the system's intervention, he would already be dead. After thinking it over, he decided to let Su Ai join the group, and they properly introduced themselves. His friend, however, leaned closer and whispered that Jiang had only agreed because he wanted to flirt with the girl, leaving him visibly uncomfortable. Meanwhile, on Earth, within the Divine Glory Kingdom in the city of Jiangjiang, the main base of Phantom Star's portal number 18 was fully active. Inside the data research laboratory, a scientist commented on how advanced modern wristwatches had become, now capable of locating explorers with exact precision. A girl beside him agreed, explaining that most wristwatches on the market could track all Phantom Star data. The better the model, the more functions it possessed. That girl, Su Lanlin, then asked the professor how the newcomers were doing, especially her younger sister. According to the GPS from the beginner's wristwatches, most participants had already been eliminated. However, her sister had formed a team with 2 other people. This information left Lanlin both surprised and frustrated, since she had specifically warned her sister not to form groups. In the balancing system, the more people gathered together in a test zone, the higher the chance of attracting monsters. 3 minutes later, while monitoring the data feed, the scientists suddenly reported 2 human-faced monsters detected nearby. Lanlin froze. She knew what those creatures were capable of. They could wipe out every beginner in the area. Her heart sank, certain that her sister stood no chance of survival. Though death on Phantom Star didn't kill a person in reality, the experience was excruciatingly real. Many had felt themselves devoured piece by piece before waking up in shock, their minds scarred. Lanlin already feared she would have to take her sister to psychological counseling after this incident. But then, the scientist interrupted her thoughts, saying that the girl was still alive. Moments later, he added something even more shocking. Not only had she survived, but both human-faced monsters had been killed simultaneously. Returning 3 minutes earlier in the virtual world, the scene unfolded in chaos. The 2 monsters charged at the main group, intent on slaughtering everyone. The players scattered in panic, running for their lives, fully aware that such creatures were far beyond their ability to defeat. Jiang, looking back, realized his companions lacked his speed. If things continued this way, they would all be caught. He told Yuan and Zhu to keep moving while he stayed behind to hold the monster, a decision that made his friend panic. Despite the fear surrounding him, the hero was convinced he could handle it, knowing that if they all kept running, everyone would die. His only option was to face the creatures alone. He gripped his weapon tightly and thrust it forward, striking one of the monsters in the chest with precision. A guttural sound escaped the creature as it staggered back, and for a moment Zhang believed he had succeeded. But the relief vanished instantly when a massive hand slammed into him, sending his body crashing into a large rock. Pain radiated through his body, and he understood that the human-faced monsters were far more resilient than he expected. A single blow to a vital point wasn't enough to kill them. As his strength began to fade, Jiang accepted that he would likely die in this beginner test. Nearby, Su Ai began to cry, shouting for Yuan to help their leader, but he stood frozen in terror. Far away, in Central River City's residential district, a woman served tea to a visitor and asked if he was the benefactor who had provided materials for her son. She confessed that she couldn't understand his optimism toward the boy, who, despite his strong build, was painfully shy. She added that if her son ever faced a monster on Phantom Star, he would surely run away. The man smiled faintly, agreeing that Yuan was indeed fearful, but noted that whenever someone needed help, the boy never turned away. At that same moment, with a shout that carried every ounce of his courage, Yuan charged at the two monsters using his martial skills. His body trembled, but his spirit burned. He wondered if his friend had stayed behind only because he thought him a coward. Channeling his aura into his fists, he declared that they were brothers, bound to stand together no matter the cost. With fierce resolve, he advanced toward the monsters, unleashing a devastating punch that struck the center of the human-faced creature's body. Jiang watched his friend and wondered if he was truly capable of defeating such an enemy with a single strike. He soon realized that, even if the damage dealt was minimal, the martial artist's control and precision were remarkable, proof of why that profession held such a high rank. Now, both Yuan and Su Ai had joined the fight. While Yuan fought head-on, Su began tending to Jiang's wounds, her healing light covering the injuries caused by the monsters. Jiang, confused, asked what she was doing there since she wasn't a combatant. Embarrassed, she explained that she couldn't abandon her teammates because a healer's duty was to treat the wounded, no matter the danger. Her father had died during a past monster wave after fighting endlessly without any healer's support. Remembering that, she refused to make the same mistake again. As her healing enveloped him, Jiang felt his strength returning completely. He stood up with renewed energy, smiling and commending her courage. Still, Su pointed out that even with all three of them fighting, their attacks weren't strong enough to defeat a single human-faced monster. Then Jiang recalled what she had mentioned earlier, that she could extract venom from snakes to strengthen weapons. He quickly retrieved the serpent's carcass and asked her to heal his friend while applying the venom to his weapon at the same time. Though uncertain, she agreed to try, determined to give it everything she had. The hero knew it was their only chance. He couldn't withstand the monster's blows, but Yuan could, thanks to his martial proficiency. Though his damage remained low, Su's healing and buffing abilities could amplify their strength. Together, they formed a classic battle formation: defense, healing, and offense working in unison. After a long and careful process, the venom extraction was completed, coating the tip of Jiang's weapon with a shimmering layer of poison. With his weapon enhanced, he prepared to charge once more, fully aware that a beginner's offensive power was still far from enough, but it was all they had. On his way forward, Jiang asked Yuan to restrain one of the human-faced monsters so that he could strike. The request was instantly understood, and Yuan resumed his role as the group's shield. Jiang knew now that if the three of them moved as one, each fulfilling their role in perfect rhythm, even a human-faced monster, infamous as a beginner killer, could fall to a team of novices. With that thought, he leapt again toward the enemy. This time, his venom-enhanced weapon struck deep into the creature's vital point, releasing a surge of energy that erupted into a thunderous explosion across the forest. The system immediately displayed a message. He had defeated a level 2 human-faced monster. His companions stood frozen for a moment, stunned by what they had accomplished together. Then, disbelief gave way to joy. But the celebration was brief, as the remaining monster trembled before them, sensing the fate that awaited it. Driven by primal instinct, it launched forward to attack again. The group quickly formed their battle positions, shield, healer, and striker, moving in flawless coordination. Their formation held, and the second fight began. Meanwhile, in the scientist's monitoring room on Earth, Su Lanlin watched in disbelief. The data from the wristwatches indicated that the novices had killed 2 human-faced monsters, something nearly impossible for players at their level. The scientist confirmed that Su Ai lacked the necessary strength or skills to deal such a blow, and both of her teammates were also only level 1. That left only one explanation. The killer was the explorer Jiang Kai. Yet, the strange part was that his occupation remained hidden, unreadable even to the monitoring systems. Lanlin frowned, doubting the data but unable to deny the results. Someone capable of killing 2 human-faced monsters at that stage must possess an extraordinary profession, and she found herself wondering who this mysterious man really was. Back on Phantom Star, the system announced that the monster's remains could be collected. Exhausted, the group collapsed to the ground, catching their breath after the brutal fight. Yuan congratulated his friend's clever strategy, and Su expressed relief that they now had the strength to face human-faced monsters, believing they could complete the test safely. However, Jiang told them not to rush. There was still plenty of time left to reach their final destination, the city of Shengjiao. He encouraged them to rest and explained that their ranking points would only be calculated after completing the test. The best performers would receive special military-grade equipment, a tremendous advantage for newcomers. Hearing this, Jiang concluded that since they now had the ability to hunt monsters and earn points, they should aim for the top ranks while they still had the chance. With that decision made, Jiang asked his companions if they liked the idea of hunting more monsters to gather points and secure the best possible rewards. The suggestion left them uncertain at first, but hours later, Yuan found himself serving as bait in the forest, surrounded by snakes and trembling with fear. His voice cracked as he complained, wondering if he would be the first to die. From his position atop a tree, Jiang watched the scene unfold and urged his friend to be braver. After all, Yuan was a martial artist, someone built to fight and endure. On another branch nearby, he reminded them that Ai was with them, ready to provide healing and support at any moment. When the snake slithered forward to strike, Jiang jumped from his perch and charged into battle, reassuring his team that dying wouldn't come so easily. The system then announced that he had slain 3 level 1 land snakes, earning 10 experience points out of the 100 required for his next level. He quickly recalled the Phantom Star rules. Only the one who delivered the killing blow received experience. Since he was currently the only one capable of finishing off monsters, the group agreed that he should take all the experience first. His rapid growth would, in turn, guarantee their safety. After a full day and night of hunting, the system congratulated Jiang on reaching level 2, rewarding him with doubled gains. He smiled, pleased that just one day of fighting had already advanced him so far. Ai praised his progress, and Yuan curiously asked how his attributes had changed. Jiang explained that he had gained 20 additional points, bringing his total to 56. The number stunned them both. Yuan pointed out that normal explorers only received 10 points per level, while Ai added that 56 points was comparable to a level 4 explorer. Jiang clarified that this difference came from his profession, which doubled all rewards, though it also doubled any punishment. The girl was amazed, calling it an incredibly powerful profession, while Yuan sighed, feeling that his own class seemed far less impressive by comparison. Then, without warning, a rift in space opened before them. The girl who represented the system appeared again, announcing that players gained new abilities upon reaching level 2. Because of Jiang's unique talent, however, he would receive 2 instead of 1. The revelation filled him with excitement, 2 professional skills instead of 1. The system continued, describing his first ability, Phantom Hand Flying Cards, which granted a 20% penetration effect when throwing objects. If the projectile was a card, the penetration increased to 200%, though it consumed twice the usual mental energy. The second ability was known as Phantom Eye. The Phantom Eye ability granted Jiang a 50% increase in visual range and tracking capacity. However, it also doubled his mental energy consumption during use, though the skill could be improved over time. Both of his new powers were long-range abilities, and even without mastering them yet, Jiang concluded that the player profession was designed for distance combat, something that suited him perfectly. Feeling stronger and more confident, he called his group to continue hunting monsters that yielded higher experience points. Yuan, however, couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy at his friend's rapid growth. 2 days later, inside the scientist's monitoring room on Earth, the chief researcher informed the instructor that Su Lanlin's sister was still alive. Lanlin commented that the team's survival meant that Jiang must still possess plenty of untapped strength. But before they could continue their discussion, several guards entered the room, bringing urgent news. The novice test area was about to become far more dangerous. The upper authorities had detected that invaders from the country of elves were infiltrating the region, a rare, large-scale invasion event. Soon after, the Supreme Commander of the Central River City District, Wei Ying, appeared and ordered immediate preparations to counter the threat. Anxious, Lanlin asked if a mass invasion was truly expected. Wei Ying confirmed it, stating that even if the report proved false, they would maintain full alert. The confirmation left her shaken. She knew the country of elves specialized in targeting novices from foreign nations, slaughtering them to stunt their growth. The rules of Phantom Star prohibited advanced players from entering novice zones, forcing new explorers to survive on their own. However, the country of elves possessed a unique profession that allowed its players to bypass this restriction and infiltrate beginner regions freely. Using this advantage, they invaded, killed, and brutalized new players from other countries, ensuring their deaths were as horrifying as possible. The psychological trauma often left the victims unwilling to re-enter the game, drastically reducing the number of new foreign explorers. Enraged, Lanlin slammed her fist on the table, cursing the invaders and worrying for her sister, who lacked the strength to defend herself against such cruelty. Seeing her distress, Wei Ying calmly ordered the staff to prepare psychological support for all novices. The large-scale invasion had already begun. For this phase of the novice test, most began to accept that there would likely be no survivors. Back on Phantom Star, Jiang and his team moved calmly through the forest, searching for new monsters to hunt and gain experience. But suddenly, Jiang sensed something nearby. His instincts sharpened, and he raised his weapon, staring toward the bushes. Yuan, confused, asked what he was doing, pointing out that they had already passed through the area and found nothing. Jiang, maintaining a serious expression, insisted that the presence he felt came from farther away. Without hesitation, he hurled his spear with all his strength toward the source of the movement. The weapon tore through the air, cutting through the brush and crashing violently in the distance. A dull impact followed. Certain that he had struck something, Jiang told his companions and sprinted ahead, calling them to check. Yuan grumbled, thinking his friend might be imagining things, but followed anyway. When they reached the spot, even in the dim light of night, they found the corpse of a short-spined wild boar, a level 2 creature. The hit had been perfectly clean. Yuan stood speechless, amazed that Jiang had managed to kill a level 2 beast from such a distance. Jiang simply stated that it was the result of his new abilities. The system then appeared, asking if he wished to collect the wild boar's remains, explaining that its spines could be used as weapon material. Without hesitation, he accepted. He quickly analyzed the abilities that had made the feat possible. The Phantom Throw skill had boosted his attack power, while the Phantom Eye ability acted like a blend of slow motion and telescopic vision, allowing him to strike with greater range and precision. Confident, Jiang told his teammates that he only needed one more experience point to reach level 3, suggesting they move on. Before they could continue, laughter echoed from the nearby river. A mocking voice commented that the group seemed rather lucky. Ripples broke the surface as figures began to rise from the water, a squad of invaders smirking as they emerged, speaking casually about the snacks they had found so soon after arriving. Taking command, Jiang demanded to know who they were. Ai froze, intimidated by their presence. One of the men chuckled darkly and said they shouldn't worry, claiming they weren't bad people at all. Their leader, drawing his weapon, declared with a cold grin that they only wished to skin the novices alive and hang their bodies to drain every drop of blood. Then, almost as if reconsidering, he added that it might be more entertaining to peel the boy's skin first and lure human-faced monsters to devour them slowly. Another invader emerged from the river, his tone calm but filled with menace. He explained that, regardless of method, their superiors had given a single order for this mission. Jiang's expression stiffened, fear flickering across his face, while the man before him simply maintained his sinister smile, a dark aura emanating from him. The invader leader then revealed the objective: to ensure that every novice from Glory City failed their test. The realization hit the group hard. Suai's voice trembled as she identified the men as invaders, killers who entered Phantom Star specifically to hunt new players. Terror spread among them. Her system scan confirmed their worst fears. Every assassin was at least level 3, and their leader was level 5. Jiang's chest tightened. Even under ideal conditions, he could barely fight evenly with a level 4 opponent. Facing a level 5 was suicide, unless he could somehow level up mid-battle. Without hesitation, the enemy commander gave the order to begin the slaughter. Jiang reacted instantly, shouting for his friends to run and split up while he drew the attacker's attention. The invader leader laughed mockingly, calling the novices cowards and asking if everyone from Shengyu City was so pathetic. Then he ordered 2 of his men, both level 3, to chase the one who had fled alone, keeping the others behind. The 2 assassins sprinted after Jiang, weaving through the trees. They taunted him, impressed by his evasive skills, but certain they were closing in. Yet, as they neared their target, he vanished from sight, disappearing into the forest's shadows. Annoyed but amused, one of them sneered, saying the boy wanted to play hide-and-seek. He promised to cut off his feet once he found him. The words had barely left his mouth when a sharp sound cut through the silence. Jiang's weapon flew from the bushes, spinning through the air. The overconfident assassin laughed, thinking he could deflect it easily. But the spear pierced straight through his chest, hurling him backward. His body crashed through trees, shattering trunks until it fell motionless. The second assassin froze, shocked. He called out, asking if his companion was all right, but there was no answer, only silence. Jiang stepped out from behind the trees, calm and expressionless. He glanced at the corpse, then turned his gaze toward the remaining assassin and asked mockingly if that was truly the power of an invader. Holding 3 more projectiles between his fingers, he remarked that the man didn't seem nearly as strong as expected. The assassin, now shaken, activated his wrist device, scanning Jiang's data. The reading confirmed it. The boy was from Shengyu City, level 2, but his total attributes reached 60. Before he could react further, Jiang moved first. Without a word, he hurled his blades with ruthless precision. The projectile struck deep, and the assassin collapsed to his knees, groaning in agony before the novice he had come to kill. With the battle finished, Jiang assessed the situation and felt satisfied. His attributes now matched those of a level 4 explorer, allowing him to dispatch a level 3 invader with ease. The earlier decision to split up had only been a tactical maneuver, a deliberate plan to lure smaller groups of enemies and eliminate them one by one. He was still just shy of the experience needed to reach level 3, but that problem would soon be solved. From what he had learned on Earth, killing another explorer allowed the victor to seize the opponent's wristwatch and choose to absorb their experience. The system confirmed his success. 2 level 3 explorers defeated, each worth 100 experience points. Without hesitation, Jiang accepted the prompt and looted their experience. A moment later, the notification appeared. He had reached level 3. His power rose sharply. The stat increase nearly doubled his capability, bringing his total attributes to 76 points, already beyond the usual 60-point average of level 5 explorers. Retrieving the watches from the fallen assassins and pulling his weapon from a corpse, he prepared to return and help his friends. Elsewhere, things were far worse. Yuan and Su Ai were barely holding on. One of the remaining assassins laughed, mocking the martial artist and the healer he had stumbled upon, saying he hadn't expected to find such valuable professions in a beginner zone. Delighted by their bad luck, the invaders decided to torture the pair slowly. Su worked frantically to heal Yuan's injuries, asking through tears if their leader would come back. Bleeding and exhausted, Yuan smiled weakly and said he definitely would. After all, Jiang always ran when pursued by girls, but never abandoned friends or family in danger. The assassins finished preparing their tools and announced it was time to skin the novices alive. But before they could act, a sharp whistle sliced through the air. Jiang had arrived. He emerged from the forest like a phantom, launching several sharpened wild boar spines. The projectiles pierced through multiple enemies in an instant, killing them where they stood. Yuan exhaled in relief, unsurprised yet overwhelmed with gratitude, knowing deep down his friend would return. The enemy commander froze, demanding to know who was attacking, but the forest gave no reply. Straining to see through the shadows, he wondered whether this boy had unlocked a new profession that allowed entry into the dead zone. Panic overtook him and he turned to flee before the unseen threat could strike again. Su watched as the man ran, trembling, muttering that the invader captain was escaping with his tail between his legs. Jiang didn't hesitate. Rage burned in his chest as he remembered the man's cruelty toward Yuan. He hurled his spear, the same weapon taken from a human-faced monster, with all his strength. The weapon tore through the air, struck the fleeing commander in the back, and drove him to the ground. A final groan escaped the man before his body went still, face pressed into the dirt, lifeless. With all the invaders finally dead, Jiang turned to Ai and asked if she was all right, confirming for her that he had truly returned. But there was no time for relief. Yuan lay on the ground, gravely wounded, and Ai quickly admitted that her healing power could no longer save him. Coughing weakly, Yuan managed a faint smile. He said he knew Jiang would come back, but his voice trembled as he confessed that this time he wouldn't be able to follow. His strength faded, and he collapsed. Struggling to keep his eyes open, he thanked them for the adventures they had shared, saying it would remain a precious memory. Then, as his consciousness slipped away, he urged them to continue on and pass the trial without him. Ai broke down in tears, blaming herself for her comrade's condition. Jiang lowered his head, calling his friend's name, but then abruptly threw one of the crippled invaders at Yuan's side. Calmly, he explained that he had intentionally left 6 of the enemies alive and wounded so that his teammates could finish them off and absorb their experience, restoring their full health in the process. The realization hit them immediately. Ai remembered that killing explorers restored vitality and experience, while Yuan, caught off guard, felt embarrassed for acting so dramatic moments before. Jiang, amused, smirked, and told them to take their revenge. The surviving invaders stared in horror, realizing the situation had reversed. Jiang's group, once desperate, now stood over them as executioners. Yuan, Ai, and Jiang called it karma, a fitting repayment, a virtue to be demonstrated to those who came uninvited. Meanwhile, in the Data Research Institute of the Stowaway Department in Country L, panic spread through the lab. One by one, the dead invaders awakened in the real world, gasping and shouting in disbelief. Each remembered vividly how a newcomer from Shenzhou had slaughtered them mercilessly. A senior officer demanded an explanation, furious that their elite unit had been annihilated, wondering aloud if Glory City had produced a profession capable of countering their infiltration forces. At the same time, in the kingdom of Shenzhou, reports arrived at the scientific monitoring base. The lead researcher informed the instructor that the situation had taken a dire turn. Ai had encountered the invaders. The news sent Su Lanlin into despair. She knew her sister wasn't ready for such horrors. The Supreme Commander could only sigh, stating grimly that no newcomer had ever survived an encounter with the invaders. Psychological support would have to be prepared immediately. The scientist, looking uneasy, clarified that his previous statement had been misunderstood. Turning toward the large display, he explained that, according to the latest readings, the girl had not only survived her encounter with the invaders, but had also leveled up. The revelation left the entire room silent in disbelief. None of them could comprehend how such a thing was possible. Commander Wei furrowed his brow, asking how anyone could gain experience after facing enemies that strong. He theorized that perhaps the invaders had assisted the novices in hunting monsters, but the scientist quickly dismissed the idea. The only remaining explanation was almost unthinkable, that Ai and her teammates had killed the invaders themselves. The commander's eyes widened. His hand trembled. The glass he was holding slipped, and it shattered against the floor. He stood abruptly, startling the instructor beside him, and demanded to see Ai's team data immediately. Within seconds, the researcher projected the information on the main screen. All 3 group members had reached at least level 3. It was undeniable proof that they had indeed defeated the enemy unit. Commander Wei's shock turned to excitement. Such a rapid increase was impossible without having slain the invaders. Even so, Su Lanlin couldn't fully believe it. Her sister was a healer, not a fighter, and Yuan's martial artist profession lacked heavy offensive power. That left only one explanation. Jiang Kai must have been the one responsible for all the kills. Yet his level and occupation remained a mystery. The scientist then revealed the reason for the missing data. Jiang's wristwatch was an outdated model, a first-generation device that no longer synchronized with the system network. Such models had been discontinued for over a decade. The instructor frowned, astonished that anyone still used such an antique. Despite the confusion, Commander Wei's interest only deepened. He ordered the researcher to gather every piece of real-world data available on Jiang Kai. Meanwhile, back on Phantom Star, Yuan marveled at the sensation of having his body fully restored after leveling up. Ai was equally amazed by the sudden surge in her power. Yan reported that he had acquired the Earth Profession skill, granting him the ability to attack nearby enemies more effectively, while Ai announced she had unlocked Doctor's heart, greatly enhancing her healing capabilities. Zhang listened calmly, satisfied that everything was progressing as expected. The healer's profession, though not flashy, was practical and invaluable in combat. Yan then turned to him, grinning faintly, and asked if, with his current strength and higher level, he would finally be able to take down the remaining invaders once and for all. At that moment, the hero revealed he was already at level 4, greatly surprising the boy. They were shocked, not understanding how he reached level 4 so quickly, realizing that his total attribute was 96, equivalent to a level 8 explorer. In this case, the protagonist explained that when escaping, he killed the 2 malefactors who followed him, reaching level 3, and then the others when he returned. This left his childhood friend indignant that the group leader was still stronger than him, and the girl asked Jiang what they should do next. In response, the hero said he heard the captain say they were part of the second team of invaders, so now they must hunt Group 1. Half a day later, in a forest somewhere in the beginner area, several enemy soldiers walked, laughing about the situation they were in. They commented among themselves about the information that Team 2 was eliminated by newcomers and mocked, saying they should retire. However, the team captain asked the soldiers to keep their guard up because when the superior mentioned it, he was quite serious. Finally, they continued walking, and one of them questioned if there was really any reason to fear since the maximum level in this zone was 5, and their group was full of those. Meanwhile, hidden behind a tree trunk, the main group began to prepare against 9 level 5 warriors. Despite the group's fear, the protagonist asked them not to be afraid, because with his current attributes, even if he could not kill them, he could still cause some damage. Moreover, it was said that if they were left alone, they would attack others, so instead of defending passively, they needed to attack. With that, the group captain noticed a warrior running toward him at the edge of the forest with his spear in hand. The assassins quickly realized that this was a rank 4 novice, and one of them was impressed by a player managing to level up in such a hostile place. In this case, the captain saw this as a great discovery and immediately ordered his subordinates to eliminate him to count as a military achievement. Thus, the assassins started chasing the hero, who found himself in a worse situation than before as the main group did not break their formation. The initial plan was to lure the enemy, and then Yuan would use his skill to repel them all, taking advantage of the gaps in the skill to finish them off. However, this team of invaders was very long, complicating things if the hero's friend could not knock them down at once. If any survivor escaped, they could mourn the others. Even so, the main group managed to come up with a solution to finish off all the invaders without needing to separate them. Thus, the protagonist filled himself with electric energy, transmitting power along with an intimidating aura, and soon charged at the bandits with his spear, thinking that he might need to shed some blood to attract them. This irritated some of the assassins and confused others, bewildered by the novice's audacity to stop fleeing and face them head-on. A few seconds before the clash began, and an assassin questioned where the novice was running to, asking if he was so scared that he had no idea what he was doing. With that, the captain ordered the hero to get out of his way and slashed his arm with his weapon. Unexpectedly, the protagonist took the hit without defending himself and continued running, thinking he was not close enough yet, leaving the bandit confused. Gradually, they all gathered around Zhang, but they were still not within the range for his plan to work. In this case, he resumed advancing against the malefactors but passed by them, dodging all their attacks to draw them in. The invader group commander, in turn, questioned what his subordinates were doing. He said they were all at level 5 and did not understand how a mere level 4 could dodge every attack. At that moment, one of the warriors, analyzing his watch panel, realized something was wrong and reported to the captain. The initial detection time had been too short to identify the attributes, but now, using a better watch, he managed to detect that while the overall attributes were hidden, the boy's agility was around 30 points. This information left the commander completely baffled by how improbable that was. Another bandit argued that his colleague must be mistaken, since his own agility as a level 5 was less than 20, making it impossible for a level 4 to surpass him. However, the commander, trembling with fear, knew that a high-ranking watch was unlikely to be wrong. In this case, he realized that if the group was chasing someone with such high agility, the boy was probably pretending to be cornered. The captain shouted to his subordinates, saying they had been deceived and ordering them to retreat immediately. The bandits understood the message, but it was too late. The hero had already dismantled their entire formation. While they tried to escape, A golden lightning flashed across the sky, signaling that their retreat was impossible. The martial artist Yuan was ready to strike with his newly acquired special ability, Earthquake. When his fist hit the ground, the entire area shook violently, lifting all the assassins into the air and leaving them exposed. The hero's body then became surrounded again by an electric aura, and he silently thanked his old friend for the perfect setup. From that point on, he took charge. Zhang unleashed his offensive, accurately launching the sharpened wild boar spines. One after another, the invaders fell, killed by his precise throwing skill, resolving the entire battle exactly as planned. Yuan stood in awe, watching his friend take down 9 level 5 warriors in an instant, wondering what kind of monstrous being he was fighting alongside. The system announced that the hero had killed 5 level 5 invaders, and upon looting them, gained 2,000 experience points, reaching the highest level of the beginner zone. With that, Zhang finally achieved level 5 and realized that, for all higher explorer levels, the experience gained from looting would be doubled. In view of the group leader's accomplishment, Ai praised him, impressed by what she had just witnessed, saying it was the first time she had ever seen such a feat. Yuan then asked if they would continue evolving further. To avoid any misunderstanding, Zhang explained that he had left 4 weakened warriors for his teammates to finish off and loot their experience. He also mentioned that earlier he had killed monsters to increase the group's combat strength, but now he had slain enough. With that, he affirmed that after everyone gained sufficient points, they would head toward the finish line. Yuan and Ai became excited, knowing it was their turn to evolve. As they walked through the forest in search of prey, the hero asked his companions to stay alert, as many monsters were said to appear along the path to the end. It was also known that the closer they got to the finish line, the stronger and more terrifying the monsters became, with a possible boss awaiting them in the beginner area. Suddenly, a powerful roar echoed through the forest, shaking the ground and filling the group with fear. From the direction of the sound, they found 2 human-faced monsters lying dead, their bodies torn apart and mutilated. The girl quickly recognized the creatures, while Yuan questioned what kind of being could have done that to mutants of such strength. Curious, Zhang activated his Phantom Eye ability, focusing his vision. Through his heightened senses, he noticed a faint golden light, one he had seen before, and realized that the same golden-colored creature must have killed the 2 beasts. I was intrigued by the discovery, but before she could speak further, the creature itself appeared, unleashing an energy blast. Yuan, unaware of the danger behind him, continued to question what could have caused such carnage. The blast struck both him and Ai, sending them backward in pain. Without pause, the creature charged straight at the hero, who momentarily froze in surprise. Recovering from the attack, Yuan shouted for Zhang to be careful, warning that the creature's strength was enough to kill instantly. The next blast hit the hero directly. The group watched in panic, expecting the worst, but instead of falling, Zhang effortlessly caught the creature mid-air. Despite the sudden impact, his high-level attributes made restraining it easy. The group looked closer and realized that the monster was nothing more than a golden hamster. Yuan and Ai were astonished by how swiftly Zhang had caught something so fast, but the hero simply dismissed it, saying the creature wasn't fast at all, just a fat rat. The hamster, insulted by the remark, grew irritated and claimed it had only been caught off guard. Amused, Zhang decided to release it, offering a second chance to prove its speed. The small creature once again surrounded itself in golden energy, spinning rapidly as it launched toward the hero. Watching this, Yuan grew alarmed and shouted at Zhang, asking why he had let the monster go, reminding him that a single bite from it had been enough to kill 2 human-faced mutants. To demonstrate his current strength, the protagonist caught the hamster again, this time with even more ease than before. He threw the creature to the ground, stating that it was too slow for him. To emphasize his point, Zhang began tossing the hamster from one hand to the other, not giving it a single chance to react or escape. The group watched in disbelief, wondering how he had become so fast and extraordinary. At that moment, the hero was strong enough to make a creature capable of killing 2 human mutants completely surrender. Holding the defeated animal, Zhang commented that the hamster probably would not try to run anymore. Yuan, still shocked, admired the incredible feat of his friend. The hero then said he did not know if this rat could be tamed and used as a combat ally, but it was still worthwhile to collect the corpses of the human-faced beasts. He added that the rest of the group was almost at level 4 and urged them to hurry, gather the remains, and find more monsters to hunt. Ai looked at the hamster, remarking that it was very cute, while Yuan once again felt disheartened, realizing that his martial arts seemed unimpressive in comparison. Elsewhere in the forest, a man walked casually, pleased to have finally reached the end of the beginner judgment zone. Ahead of him stood the finish line, the grand city of Shenjiu. Without hesitation, he began climbing the massive palace staircase step by step until reaching the main gate. As the gates opened, a squad of soldiers emerged, congratulating him for passing the test and identifying themselves as guides for new explorers. Their leader, Jiatu, welcomed him officially as a Phantom Star explorer, but added, with a hand on his shoulder, that someone had already claimed first place. He reassured him that ranking was not important and that simply passing the judgment was a great accomplishment. The explorer accepted this, though he revealed his inventory, showing a large collection of monster corpses to demonstrate his high level. The soldier's spirits lifted immediately, realizing that rankings were based on points and that the young man's collection could earn him many exchanges. Curious, Xiatu asked how he had managed to kill so many monsters. The explorer simply laughed, calling the question meaningless. He introduced himself as Huanwei, the second young master of the Huan family, and said he would soon become a high-ranking member of the Xuanwu Guild. He explained that he had received special training before entering Phantom Star. Recognizing the family name, Xiatu understood who he was dealing with. Since Xuanwu was one of Shenjiu's top 10 guilds, the soldier congratulated the boy, saying that with so many points, he would be among the city's best. Huanwei, however, dismissed the compliment with arrogance. For him, taking first place in the judgment was only the beginning. With a malicious grin and dark confidence, he declared that, given enough time, the entire Phantom Star would soon belong to him. Meanwhile, deep in the beginner zone, Jiang and his group continued searching for monsters for their level 3 teammates. As they advanced through the forest, the hero remarked that something felt strange. They had not encountered a single creature for quite some time. He hypothesized that the monsters might have been scared away by the presence of the hamster, who was quite popular with Ai. Suddenly, a roar was heard deep in the forest, frightening the entire team. Quickly, powerful and sharp claws appeared, and more enemies began to emerge. In an instant, a whole pack of shadowless wolves surrounded the group completely. Among them, one monster stood out with its strong presence and aura concentrated in its claws. This was the boss of the novice area, the shadowless Wolf King, ready to eliminate all humans before it. The hero realized that the reason they had not encountered any monsters was that they had unknowingly entered the boss's territory. With the pack leader organizing the wolves, the explorers were soon surrounded. Yuan, terrified, said he had heard that the Wolf King was a strong creature that had never been killed in the beginner zone, meaning certain death for anyone who faced it. The protagonist held his weapon tightly, trembling, knowing he could escape alone, but that the others could not. Seeing this, he understood that the only choice they had was to fight to the death. Jiang told the two explorers that fleeing was not an option. With no other choice, they decided to work together to kill the Wolf King. Taking the lead in battle, the hero charged at the boss with his weapon, and Yuan used his earthquake ability to distract the others. Jiang continued running without looking back while his childhood friend jumped and landed, shaking and breaking the ground around them. Ai also decided to help and added the poison factor to the hero's weapon. He then asked only for support, using all his abilities at once as he threw the spear at the boss. Giving everything he had, the hero tried to finish the battle against the beginner zone boss with a single blow. However, the spear merely bounced off the creature's hard skin, leaving the group desperate. In response, the boss roared, signaling the counterattack, and all the wolves lunged forward. Even though they were lower-level monsters under higher command, they managed to wound Ai and Yuan, who asked if there was another way. In this situation, the hero knew that the Wolf King's defense was very strong and that he could not defeat all the wolves around them. Amidst the noise and movement, the hamster woke up from its sleep, confused. Looking around and analyzing the situation, it understood what was happening and blamed the wolves for disturbing its rest. While the hero fought with all his strength against the wolf pack, the hamster activated its ability to the maximum. It jumped from the hero's hood, darting through the air and creating strong wind currents as it passed, then unexpectedly pierced the Wolf King's chest with ease. Jiang could not hide his surprise that the small rat managed to bite through the wolf's tough skin. To confirm, he activated his Phantom Eye concentration ability and saw the size of the wound, realizing that the situation could change if they focused their attacks there. At first, his throw had failed because of the boss's high defense, but now, with an exposed wound, damage was possible. Jiang launched another attack at the wolf, this time using one of the wild boar spines he had kept. The projectile, charged with electrical energy, struck the open wound directly, causing visible injury. The hero understood that his attacks were working and continued using Phantom Eye to aim precisely at the weak point. At that moment, the projectile shone with a bright light, and the rare 200 times critical hit activated. The others did not understand what had happened, especially Yuan, who had only seen one strike. Both his teammates and the hero himself were astonished when the system displayed a message congratulating him for defeating the novice boss. Though he had planned to prolong the fight, luck had triggered the critical hit, ending the battle instantly. He realized that since changing professions, he had never experienced a critical hit, making this the first of its kind. With their leader gone, the remaining wolves panicked and tried to flee. To stop them, the protagonist asked if his comrades could still fight, and they confirmed they could. Zhang charged forward, declaring that without their king's command, the wolves were nothing more than prey waiting to be slaughtered. Yuan and Ai, remembering the suffering the wolves had caused, were determined not to let any escape. Without delay, all three explorers engaged the pack, turning the tide completely. Yuan and Ai fought more effectively now, taking down monsters on their own. After several minutes of combat, the fight ended with the group's complete victory. Against all expectations, the novices not only survived, but also leveled up and defeated the beginner zone boss, an unprecedented feat. Once again, the protagonist mentioned that he had left some wolves weakened for his companions to finish off. Yuan, catching his breath, asked what would come next. Without hesitation, Jiang replied that since everyone now had enough experience, their next step was to proceed to the finish line. After a short time skip, the heroes finally reached the territory of Shenzhou City on Phantom Star, the largest activity base for their nation's explorers. Despite having been submissive for a long time, the hamster jumped out of the protagonist's hood and began to flee, which worried Ai. Zhang, however, assured her that it was fine, as he had never intended to restrict the creature's freedom, especially one that had helped so much in the final battle. A little farther into the city, the group finally arrived at the final reception hall of the beginner's judgment. The guide, Xiatu, congratulated them for completing the trial, and Zhang asked to see the ranking of the newcomers who had passed, which was approved without issue. At that moment, the young man from a wealthy family appeared with a malicious smile, saying he hadn't expected the maid who worked for his household to participate. He offered to show the ranking himself, and Zhang thought he hadn't expected to see Huang Wei there so soon. Proudly, the rich boy looked at the list, claiming first place for himself and mocking that Zhang's group had also made it, but from the bottom up. Other bullies joined in, laughing and calling the hero's team losers, questioning how they even dared to ask about their positions. In his mind, Zhang remembered that his sister had worked for the Huang family to save money so he could join Phantom Star. Despite her efforts, the young master constantly harassed her and even used his brother's illness to humiliate them both. Enraged, Yuan stepped forward to confront him, but Zhang stopped him, saying it was fine. He then apologized to everyone present and calmly stated that the rankings would soon be reorganized, with his group taking the top 3 spots. For a moment, silence filled the hall before being broken by the bully's laughter, mocking the statement as pure delusion. In response, Zhang told his teammates that they no longer needed to pretend. Ai agreed, and Yuan, activating his watch, said he was ready. Without hesitation, the main group decided to prove their worth, displaying their inventories before the massive screen as the rankings began to refresh. The bullies froze in disbelief, staring wide-eyed at the sight of countless monster corpses, all belonging to only 3 explorers. Huang Wei's shock deepened as he noticed not only human-faced beasts, but also shadowless wolves among their trophies. When his gaze fell upon the corpse of the shadowless Wolf King, he called it impossible, demanding to know how a group of supposed losers could have defeated the boss. The hero, unfazed, simply replied that the rankings would reveal what was true and what was not. Moments later, a notification appeared, and the leaderboard began to update, confirming the authenticity of their points. Inevitably, the arrogant noble was forced to face reality. The very group he had mocked had taken the top 3 positions. That wasn't all they had. The young man wondered if they could earn points by making the invaders disappear for good. The knight then noticed that the wristwatches they carried belonged to the invaders from Country L. Another contestant scoffed, claiming they had exposed themselves as liars. After all, rookies couldn't possibly handle that many invaders. He turned to the crowd, asking if any of them had ever faced invaders before, and everyone admitted they hadn't. With that, he demanded the leader disqualify the so-called talented ones, convinced they were fakes. The murmurs of jealousy spread, the crowd calling for punishment for the supposed liars. But then, someone stepped forward, confirming that invaders did exist. They just hadn't managed to alert everyone in time. Yibing, shocked when he learned the truth, said his superiors had actually ordered him to commend Jiang Kai and his group.